Welcome to the TMC Project, where we talk about mind, metabolism, and money. We're excited to have you here. It's going to be an awesome episode. If this is your first time, please like, subscribe. We're excited to show you a different way of thinking and just kind of how to go about the world. How are you doing today, Dustin?
Good.
We know that Vegas is completely shut down right now, like in a way it's never seen before. But I'm kind of curious, how was shopping?
It's pretty cool getting to take advantage of all those like drive up options. Actually, I found it weird, but it is what it is. We pulled into so you get sent the message from Target in like a SMS pop up that says, click this button when you're arriving. Well, as soon as we pulled in the parking lot, it already knew we arrived, and as we pulled into the spot, the person was already coming out with the shopping cart. Didn't need to take any information, had already had it from the phone, knowing that the phone had pulled up. Lady just comes up with a cart full of stuff, asked if she could put it in the back seat or in the trunk. Didn't want, obviously, no touch, no signature. Just needed last name, put it in the trunk, and off we drove. And it was kind of how it should be, I guess. But because of the way that it's happening now, it kind of more came across as weird. I mean, just in the whole thing, like I said, them knowing that we pulled up and where we had pulled up and all that was kind of, yeah, reminds me of a nice police state, but whatever.
I assume that means you were using the Target app specifically.
Yeah, it seems so. I mean, my mom had done it, like I said yesterday, while I was on a conference call. I got out, and as soon as I walked out there, she's like, "Oh, we have a bunch of orders that are going to be ready to be picked up." I'm like, "Okay, yay!" So, yeah, that was the first one, and that was just kind of like, wow. Again, weird to pull up and just have the thing know not only where you were, but basically the location in the parking lot. I mean, she did had to put in the details that it was a blue car, but her car wasn't even on their list of types of cars. So she just typed in a blue car, and they knew what direction immediately to walk out towards. And then, yeah, saw the car, came to it, put it in. I was just like, that's really odd.
So with that's cool. I mean, obviously, with it being a direct app, it makes it, her location settings are on across the board. And I'm sure when you open that app, there was a bunch of allows. Like every time I open up a new app, I don't know why I'm annoyed that I've got to allow it to use my camera. Um, but that's on the back end. So with Walmart, Walmart, I don't know how their actual app works, but doing a couple door dashes, when you get there, there's a parking area with numbers, and then DoorDash pops up saying, um, like just enter a number, and then it has you enter the number a second time. I think that's more a glitch, or it's just like repeating itself because it doesn't change the words. It just says enter the number, and then literally you hit OK. The window reopens, has the same number again. So you're just pressing OK twice, and then they come out. They come out to that. But when I was
Yeah, there
talking,
was numbers on the ground for you to go into in this thing, and that's kind of what I thought was going to happen because when we pulled in, you could see this big, pole in the parking lot with that saying, pickup services here. We got up towards it, it was all full, so we hadn't even parked in their little spots. We parked like two down from it, and like I said, it was kind of weird. And that wasn't the only one of those. There was three of them set across, like one centered, one to the left, one to the right. We pulled in, went to the far one to the left just because it looked like it had spots as we pulled in. Got up there, no spots, parked near it, and yeah, immediately they just came out. Didn't need to put in a spot number or nothing.
it's funny where self checkout removed a lot of jobs. Uh, Self pickup I think would actually, bring it back to, bring it back up. I don't want to say add jobs because we're, it's probably a net even, but that seems
Well, it
like,
takes out stupid jobs. I mean, like I used to stock shelves in a grocery store, and that was like the worst job ever because it's like you're getting no need for the fronting on the shelves or to manage a clean, I don't want to say manage a clean work environment, but basically, it could be all cardboardy and whatever the hell in the store, and it doesn't really matter because they're coming out in a cart out front in fancy little bags.
so besides Target, what was PetSmart or the other place, or was it just really Target that you hit and that had everything?
No, that was, I mean, that was one of a few stops. That was the more, neat setup ones. But like I said, just kind of more hit me as odd. Just that whole, it partly doesn't help too. I was watching something about, what was it, South Korea. They're basically watching this locations on the phones, and one of our U.S. citizens, whatever, that is stuck over there. His phone battery, he had failed to plug in the phone overnight, and at about 7:45 a.m., his battery died. By 8 a.m., the room phone was being called by their local authorities, and when he didn't answer it because he wasn't sure what the hell, 8:15 they had the cops at his door to make sure he was still in the house. So, and then it's like immediately after we're being tracked on the Target app, and I'm like, oh my God. And then they're also putting out data about that they can tell that people are moving around less in certain areas, and there's maps out now where you can see where people are abiding by the lockdowns as opposed to not, and it's all going off the movement off the phones. So as much as it's not supposed to be shared data or whatever you want to call it, it's being watched.
I find it so interesting. Obviously the fear part's easy, like we all know and understand that, but the opportunist aspect of our nature it might be as crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many levels of what's going on right now that's crazy. I mean, with this whole stimulus package, all the little hidden bills that were attached and affixed to it before it was allowed to get passed and everything is wild. Messing with voter registration formats and things like that as part of this bill, gun restriction laws, odd things that should have had nothing to do with it, but the both parties decided to sneak in little things. It seems like the Democrats went hard this time just because they want to make Trump look like an idiot and make it delay for a couple days. So, I mean, there's a windmill credit tax attached to this COVID-19 bill. Because that's what we needed.
Throughout all of history, I mean, honestly, since I don't so much say I say Reagan because I'm not good about the other presidents, but right around where the CIA kind of got implemented, it seems like since that point on, there just it is virtually impossible to have a bill go through that is just that bill. That is when
it's about post-Kennedy.
Thank you.
That's what's crazy. It's been a while. There is no just a bill for the sake of being a bill. It has to do this and do that. There's a part to this bill that's going to save the post office jobs. There's a part to the bill that's going to strengthen the unions in the industrial segment. There's all kinds of which that's all good things, I guess. But at the same time, too, you're pushing it under a fear-based bill, and now you've got the entire public like pushing for this bill because they know they're getting a few bucks out of it, and so they just slapped it with everything they could think of that they were trying to do. I haven't been able to fully take apart and look at the what exactly passed, but it also seems like that thing that I don't know if you've heard about it, but they're trying to strip out the end-to-end encryption. It looks like they took a swing at that too, taking out end-to-end encryption in SMS and texting, things like the WhatsApp and whatnot, and a few other cuts at that. That whole thing where they were going to start holding platforms responsible for what's being said on them that had originally been passed where, like Facebook can't get in trouble if a racist group posts something racist. They just have to be vigilant about taking the racist group down. It seems like they took a swing at making the platform responsible now. Yeah, it has nothing to do with anything. I mean, I don't know if that segment ended up getting put in. It looks like the part two to increase the prices of guns and eliminate some more guns from users was made its way in there. It's like HR 5757 or something like that.
I would love to. I've yet to be able to find a place where I can find the bill in any way, shape, or form that's readable, besides headline posting. But that's where people are seeing headlines, so that's what they're posting off of. But what I've only seen is, I can't believe this side of the group is either pushing this through. It's always negative. It's yet to be positive. So like one of the biggest examples as a Mormon state, abortion is just always going to be that they're not for funding it. And I'm for not funding anything personally, but seeing like, oh my God, the Democrats it's been the Democrats stopped. It's either been the Democrats stopped this bill because of abortion. Don't reelect your Democrat next time, or the inverse. But it's always been it. No matter what it's been, let's pick something else that's in there, and then now let's hate the party for them stopping a benefit. It's very the human nature of how and I have no way of articulating responses to them because it's such a, my way of wording things triggers fast thinking, but I'm trying to get like think slowly about this. But no matter you have to mention the things that are triggering, and it's very hard to do that without getting lost on this part when we're just like the concept of that's been the weirdest part. Like, oh my God, look what they're trying to do, and they doesn't matter, and what they're preventing and what they're pushing. It's almost like pop music.
That's the worst thing too. We're in a freaking goldfish society, so it really doesn't matter. You can show every face of what you're talking about today, and tomorrow it's something else, and then voting day comes up in 5 months, and it's who they think looks pretty on the screen or who their friend voted for or whatever else. It really has no bearing on 90% of people. They can sit here and talk all this crap about freaking Trump, but we could get a stimulus the day before and we're going to get 80% approval because everybody got a check mailed. It's crazy.
If I was to think generically, I would be for, as a rule, politicians preventing a stimulus bill going through because they don't like something in it. Regardless, because at its core, anything extra, I will, like, all things being even, yes, I reject all extras slipped into it, regardless of politics or who you're trying to make happy. Like the prevent, like, but then I'm literally, oh, so you just don't want people to get anything? Yes, if we're being force fed a bunch of other things, I would prefer to go the fasting method.
I agree with that. And there's some like second, third level politics going on too. I mean, the Democrats, after they put their junk in there, they basically told the Republicans, if you don't agree to this, then we're going to force our right to call for an in-person vote on this. Well, they all just flew into Capitol Hill, all agreed on it. They were told that, don't worry, you can do the virtual vote over the phone. They all left, and now they're being told that if you don't just agree to it how we said, then we're going to make you all now fly back in, put your health at risk and everything else to renegotiate this.
Politicians love strong arm tactics. They're very effective.
As I say, for them, it's definitely a wild situation right now. You got Joe Biden up there having Alzheimer's all over the screen, and they just keep making him stand up there and do it because it seems like they're going to push Clinton as his vice president. So she'll just take over the office as soon as they declare him incompetent. Wild times.
Question is, regardless of what happens, how much will it actually affect the result of the presidency? And by that, I really just mean the changing from one side to the other. I think the person is almost irrelevant. I think it's how can this situation be framed as either a negative for one or a positive for the other. But my mind naturally, and I don't know if it's a good thought or if it's just a quick thinking, that I think no matter what on the back end, the Republicans stay only because, as a rule, we don't change parties in the middle of a crisis. And if the crisis recently ended, which means we successfully got through it, we tend to keep the same party in. The change doesn't tend to come, it tends to come after the fact. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, to me, it points out that the whole system is bullshit and it shouldn't be either. And it would be great if Sanders had a swing at it just to see a third party finally get in there since back at like Lincoln times. But if and when it comes up, it doesn't seem like he's going to have the opportunity to, with the way they set up the voting with the most recent laws passed, is you can only vote for one of two parties. So during the preliminaries and everything, it's only during the final vote, that you go in on that whole November 7th thing that you can vote for Sanders. If you're doing any pre-voting, mail-in voting, all that stuff, the only ones listed are the Republicans and Democrats. So it's a way of kind of strong-arming out anybody but the two primary parties.
Yeah, reduce the perceived limit of choice. There are enough people who will argue that if you go with them, you're just like, if you're going with Party 1A, you're just hurting Party 1. You're just subtracting from them. You're just letting Team 2 win if you help 1-B.
Supposed to be third party, which is not Republican nor Democrat. I know they keep coming up with different names with it, which doesn't help his part to it. From Green Party to Independent to back to Green to this to that.
As a rule, the Democrats are about more centralized power rather than less. So, I'm like, man, there's I wish I could remember his name. He's an Asian gentleman who has probably the most sound argument for a base, that baseline income, a universal income. Although that's a deep philosophical conversation, but a lot of at his core, he's probably the only real business Democrat I've heard them like. I think you have some real rational, like rationed thought processes against this. You're probably the most, if then, but not. But at its core, he's not trying to seize a bunch of power for the state, not for himself. Or that's the weird one. But Bernie, give us more power so we can do more, has universally hurt us over the longer term, because the next person who comes in now has said power regardless.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like that's what's happening like right now too with some of these things that are getting passed. I mean, it's supposed to be a COVID-19 bill supposedly that lasts during the duration of the COVID-19, but a lot of the different parts on it have no end. It's not like 3 months we reevaluate and it's gone. It's like, no, your gun rights have been taken indefinite.
These are basically amendments, not bills.
And that's the worst thing is too, is you have like a good chunk of the population would all vote that crap in so that they could, feel safe. But it's like you just don't understand what you're doing to yourself, or the next generation, or the people that don't want to be policed.
Yeah.
I mean, there is no opt-in. You can now be physically hurt in being arrested because you are in a group of 10 or more, where you're at the park and the cops consider you to be a group. That could be, as much as it is what it is. I mean, like right now, dude, all these poor basketball players out on the court.
5-on-5.
You got a bunch.
Small
dude, you got a bunch
skate.
of white people. You got a bunch of white people hurting from frickin', feature to feature playing Pokemon. There's easily more than 10 of us. We're not being talked to. But those poor dudes out playing basketball, boy, they're being real quick. Cops come into the parking lot, break them all up, take 1 or 2 into custody. And it's like, if this guy's going to now have a criminal record for playing basketball.
Or, what I see, for me, it's always I don't like your ability to check my record if I'm not currently doing anything wrong, period. So it's more like, didn't pay a parking ticket, which was not a criminal offense, but not paying the fine was a criminal offense. And now I get to look you up. And now because I had a justifiable reason to look you up, because you had friends, I now get to take you away from society. And jail has always been a successful rehabilitator for, actual criminals. I'm sure it's going to help non-criminals all day long. Obviously, I mean, look at all the numbers that support that.
Yeah, dude, yesterday they had put out the stats that already there's been 100 citations issued and 17 arrests for businesses that were open when they were considered non-needed. And the actual declaration that was made by the mayor or whatever segment of government made it is that, non-essential businesses are now to be closed, period. And we're giving the police the power to come out and let you know. And within 2 days, they had made 17 arrests and given citations to over 100 businesses. So it's like, who the hell are you to choose what is needed and what's not? I believe a fair amount of them too, which is kind of a funny conundrum on it, is that the marijuana stores were allowed to stay open. The alcohol stores were told to close, and a lot of the alcohol stores were like, kiss my ass, if one drug can stay open, then we're going to stay open. And they went and arrested a bunch of them.
So I'm just curious, how many people are in that jail cell at any given time, and who can we arrest when that goes over 10?
Yeah, exactly.
Just curious.
We've got that going on, but yet Rikers is letting people out because they're just going to start dropping left and right. So, you've got one end putting them in, and then the other end having to let them out because it's so, bad. I guess they haven't had soap in Rikers for like over 2 weeks now. No toilet paper, no nothing. Yeah.
For us, I don't know who recommended it, but it's basically 6 feet away. We won't question the safety or the validity of that, but to me, my brain immediately thinks, so if I've got 10 people and we're all 6 feet away, then we're not in a group. Which ones connect? Which ones align? Or is it just we get to, is this just a create your own story of thinking fast and justifying your actions? Because, dude, you know me, there has to be consistency, and everything has to be falsifiable. If you can't falsify it, we're not going to talk about it. But it now needs to also, the truism needs to stay true. That's the entirety of my intelligence is based on those two principles, plus question everything.
We can agree that these are about 6 inches apart, but if the cop drives by at that angle, where are you?
So clever.
Arrested.
That's true, and I don't necessarily know if I get close to my friend or far to my friend, but I think I would reactively get closer to my friend if I felt a threat. And to me, authority triggers
exactly. The
triggers
cops
threat.
come up.
Yeah, I don't get further away, and if I did get further away, is that because I'm now running?
100%. I mean, I probably would, and that's what we're saying. Now you're trying to separate yourself, and you're getting beat down for that one.
Yeah. Why'd you run away? Wasn't trying to be in a group. Didn't want to make that mistake.
I was trying to make it 60 feet, sir.
Will we fearmonger longer to keep the control longer?
You know, it seems like at a lot of levels, especially when it comes to government things, is it's always like, well, that's not going to happen to my class, my people. They wouldn't do that to me. You've got all these businesses that I'm sure voted in a bunch of this crap. And now that they're at the backhand of the slap, they're like, what the hell? But, you know, I'm sure many of them were all voting in, oh, don't have groups, don't have this, blah, 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 because they didn't want their businesses messed with while they were, you know, closed down or whatever else. And it's like, you know, everybody always thinks that, oh, it's not going to happen to them. It's happening to everybody.
The cognitive dissonance of the two concepts of, you know, we need to make a law to stop this, and it's not going to happen to me. Don't understand how those aren't even kissing cousins, bro. That's straight incestuous. It's just so inaccurate.
And a lot of it too is, you know, like you got to think of who's actually doing the voting and things like that. You know, all these little Chinese or Afghanistan-run businesses and things like that. Those dudes aren't going to the poll booth and voting on any of this. So you've got the ones who do go vote thinking those are the ones that are going to be affected by this. And, you know, I'm sure immediately, yeah, they were. But it's like when you give them that much power, you know how it works. Dude, I think it was in January, they opened up some red flag law in, I believe it's Maryland, I have the states wrong, but where it basically means that the cops can come in unannounced on a warrant. Somebody called in on some dude, Drew something or another, and, you know, called in and said he seemed to pose a threat. I believe his name was like Drew Lemke or something like that in Maryland, where they were exercising this red flag law where they can do a non-announced warrant. And they showed up to the dude's house at 4 a.m., made their way in, and the dude was shot multiple times while he was sleeping in his bed. His pregnant wife was also shot, laying next to him. And that all was enacted over some, you know, keep the cops safe. They can execute these warrants now without, you know, announcing. Well, it's like, you're lucky, first off, the dude didn't have a gun, because if some dude stormed my house and I had a gun, somebody's getting shot. I'm sure it includes me, but it doesn't matter. That's not, you know, how that narrative would go down. But yeah, dude was just shot and killed in his bed, multiple gunshots while he was sleeping. And then, of course, since then, they put the cops on administrative leave, but that was only after mysteriously all their body cam data disappeared. It only took 3 months, and I say it only took 3 months. It's, you know, I guess one of a handful of warrants now that they've decided to use this red flag exercise. But dude, within, you know, under 10 cases of using that, somebody's already been shot and killed while they were sleeping. Like, that's insane.
And you just need one court case where a judge justifies it, because even lawyers are based on, oh, let's find someone else who said yes first, and now the judge will fold. He doesn't have to make judgment.
Yeah, and it started with an anonymous call. You know, somebody that wouldn't give their name or their details, saying that this kid was threatening. He's 21.
Even if he was threatening, there's a reason there's a difference between assault and battery.
100%. Assault can be just, yeah, calling a minority out by a minority slang.
Oh, that's way worse, bro. Don't you dare have hate as part of your intention. Like, how dare you? That, like, somehow that's way, way worse. And again, yes, only if there's actually a crime committed. I don't like this additional punishment for pre. Like, it's very weird. At post, 100%. I don't care if you hate someone who is the wrong race. If you don't hurt them, and if you do hurt them, and we can connect it to being actually hate-filled and not just like, dude, I mean, I've assaulted people verbally and way worse than most people, and the words I've used were always filled with vitriol. Not like it wouldn't even be hard to connect those dots in an emotional moment. But like that,
Hmm.
those cannot be connected. They are, but
That's the, yeah, like where does the right to free speech come into there? It's like you should be able to say whatever you want up until the point of, yes, the battery comes in. Then, okay, let's take into account what he was screaming while he was doing it.
yes,
You know,
and apply a
if that
different
was hate
punishment.
filled, yeah, exactly. If that was hate filled and all this different things while he was beating him, yeah, that's it's kind of a bit much.
Yeah,
Let's go ahead and double down. But if, but if it's just, you say either what's on your mind, what you grew up around, because that's the worst thing. A lot of
yeah,
people grew up around it. It's natural, it's innate.
dude. There's
My
a lot
mom,
of words we
has a
use.
level of,
There's
yeah,
a
has a
lot of
level of
words we use that have.
prejudice that she hates. She don't like it, but yet she grew up around, 40 or 50 years of my grandparents being as racist as they were.
Mhm.
It's built into you. It will come out over time.
Society dictates that, not us. And society seems to be more dictated by our government more than ever.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I mean, too, it's like, we've got the other side to it. I'd gone to this diversity class in college, and it was a great explanation. One of the black dudes in the class was like, "Listen," he's like, "I don't want to be prejudiced, but I am." And everybody's just like, "Oh my God, I can't believe he said it." He's like, "Listen, most of us grew up without our parents. We're living with our grandparents. How do you think they lived? They lived through Rosa Parks." He's like, "So you think that that's just going to disappear?" He's like, "Yeah." And then of course he went in a little bit, whatever you want to call it. He's like, the white man introduces crack, takes out all our parents, and now we're stuck living with grandparents who came from the 40s.
Yeah, our thinking fast answers questions, but it can answer them with reasonable explanations because they're true, because they're not false, and people take that as like a justification. But I lean towards sexuality heavily whenever because I agree, this is the way I emotionally feel. It's not the way I consciously act. But if you're asking how my programming is, that I go to sexuality. I seem to like boys. That is, I hear no difference between that to like, yeah, I seem to dislike white people, and here's the rational reasons that my brain lists for it justifying that feeling. Now here I am trying to think slowly as a conscious human being using, I don't know, the brain that came in the last 100,000 years or the last 2,000 years, and not most recently, saying it's not the way I want to be. But if you're asking what is, how can I? You can't be honest if everyone is allowed to react and then judge you against that. Like, how do you change your programming?
100%. Yeah, can't do it out loud.
Like if you acknowledge, like, acknowledging an obstacle is the first way of objectifying it and going over it. But if you identify with it in any way, shape, or form, that seems worse than it actually being true. Like it would be less worse if I did it in silence and agreed with it rather than tried to objectify it. And you can't objectify something in you without identifying it first.
Dude, 100%. I mean, they wonder why these little pop-up weird groups come up where they try to take out other people, this, that. Well, had they been just allowed to freely say it, they all would have got it out of them, you know? Other people would have gotten out of them, calling them whatever, but it all would have been out in the open. And I'd say it would probably cut back on a good 75, 80% of that. But instead, you make these people go to isolation where they're allowed to sit in a room with a couple of them. And that anger just builds and builds and builds. And now they're acting on it.
I mean, it's funny I say I don't get it, but like I do, and it's not less frustrating.
Yeah, welcome to my world. I sit there and watch all these freaking monkeys run around and do all this craziness. It's like, dude, I see why all this is happening, and it sucks. I wish I'd ignorant is true bliss, because then you could just go and fish around with them. But it's like instead I gotta stand here and watch this play out and know that my world is being affected by it, and not much you can do about it.
Yeah, I probably cannot actually alter this, but I've also had this hum in the back of my head through this entire conversation. All of the changes that have actually happened haven't actually had any tangible effect. All the things that they are, all the ways that they are systematically creating more and more control for 90% of the population, I don't actually know how much they actually affect them until.
Yeah, it's like really realistically, having a, set of money or whatever that would bring you up to another level of living would remove you from that environment or, whatnot. But that's not truly changing anything. That's like moving to a cave and mining for gold. You're taking away all the outside stimulus of what's happening, but you're not changing what's happening. You're just removing yourself from it, making yourself comfy in your little, bubble of life.
Changing your reality, changing your context.
Mm.
And what can we do?
That's the worst thing is, it seems so structured at the highest level to make sure that nothing's going to change. And with the level of policing that's happening now, I believe we're at that point where there wouldn't be the availability of any type of resistance or overthrow, coup d'etat, whatever you want to call it, just because we are so monitored and so, basically that, just monitored, that it could never come to any level of power. It's not like, a group of people could ever say, okay, we're going to fight against this, because Twitter can be shut down the second too many tweets per second are happening about a specific content, things like that.
It's funny that the only way it works is by controlling the information. Because I do think, I don't know, I don't remember the exact reasons why they say Rome fell, but I do think, one, it is our nature to rebel against control, and no matter how much fear happens, there will be a line. Like, could there be a police state? Yes. Would our government fall because of it? I don't know the timeline of what happens, but 100%, I don't think our human nature all of a sudden changes. I just think, okay, so this is the 20 years, because I don't think we accept it. I mean, even as I say that, I'm like, ooh, I don't know, man. There's a lot of SSRIs, and I'm fairly confident that will keep enough people numb. But if we're not fat and happy, so we don't know about that control. But then you could go into the whole VR aspect, like, oh no, we're giving you an infinite amount of freedom. But at its core, I think I think any level of, if it was really that level of control, we would rebel. I mean, especially America specifically, that seems to be in a lot of our genetics deeper than a lot of other cultures.
Oh yeah, 100%. I 100% agree. That's just the problem, though, is we're getting to the level where the capacity or capability to rebel is being stripped away left and right. I mean, what are you going to rebel with? A stick? Can't have a gun. They've shut off gun supply in, I think it's 17 states now, considered guns non-essential. Mm-hmm.
Man, there's enough stupid people that would agree with that consideration.
Yeah, it's kind of funny right now how many people are upset that they can't quickly get a gun, yet they were the same ones that voted in the song and dance you have to do before getting a gun.
Although there's never been more, I don't say Democrats because I don't want to make it a party, but one thing that's been very true is there's been more people who've been anti-gun that have purchased, like, those people, the people who didn't want guns and don't think they're safe, have purchased at a higher rate than anyone else before, prior to these things being enacted.
A lot of people are afraid for their safety just because they've known that, look at previous things that have happened. After Katrina, that was a big one. A lot of shops, it was more of a down south thing, but a lot of places were looted and taken advantage of, and had anybody been able to stand up to that, they couldn't have ended it all, but they could have definitely stopped it from happening at their place.
How knowledgeable are you about lead acid batteries? And by that I mean I know they corrode, but I also know that I say water, but let's say electrolyte. The electrolyte can be replaced, so that way they have. So we're not talking about maximum capacity. We're just talking about longevity of some sustainable capacity through a refresh method that is possible. And by possible, I mean reasonable. Like salt and water are readily available no matter what. Maybe it's location specific, but does a lead acid battery, what battery would, because it's not lithium ion. It's not any of the new batteries are all rare mineral they're not refreshable. They're just longer. They're better in every aspect, but not in the sense of you can extend their capacity long term or refresh it if if it was a primary storage source of power generated.
Well, if you're looking for longevity on it or whatever, it's basically its environment first off is a big factor to it. Just weather is going to, over the long run, cause corrosion with those types of batteries and everything. I mean, the electrolyte or electrolytic acid that you need can be most strong acids. I mean, try to think of the acid that's in the standard ones. I used to use it when growing because the electrolytic acid was crazy strong. It's like, okay, so if you're growing and you need to alter the pH of the water, you buy this gallon jug, and it's like you got to use like a half a cup of this liquid to alter the pH by like 1 point, which is a big swing. But
Well,
I
it's
mean, you
massive. I
still need it.
understand that.
But it's like I would go buy car battery acid and use that, and when I instead of needing a cup, I needed a drip,
What is car
and a
battery acid?
electrolytic acid.
Yes, but like, what is the I'm sorry. What is the electrolyte in car battery acid?
That's what I was trying to think of. Yeah, I can't think of it right off the top of my hand because it also had benefit to the plants, which was funny.
So, I mean, probably potassium. It's not calcium.
No, it was micronutrients, but yeah, drawing a blank right now.
That's
So
fine.
deep into.
I think a boiler is probably the easiest thing to long-term create pressure. And a three-phase generator is just a spinning magnet. So those are very easy to do and maintain. But all we're doing is building a level one grid that America runs off of. And when we're talking about sustainable energy for a home or for, we'll say, residence or shelter, I like shelter, the bottleneck is the storage, because bleed in. If you can bleed in more than you subtract, it's all about the bank. It's about management. It's not about creation. It's not about utilization. It's about that management. And I know it wouldn't be hard to have a boiler, have a bike, many ways of generating that passively and actively, but without a storage to hold on to it so it can be used later on. And to me, it seems lead acid is probably the easiest way.
Well, it's like that's kind of like the most, I guess, user replaceable way. You're not going to be able to go rebuild your lithium ion batteries, but at the same time, too, if you had a digital manager to an array of lithium ion batteries that continually, drained one down to 10% capacity, then recharged that one to 100%, and went on to the next, drained that down to 10, refilled it to 100%, and went through its array one by one and did it something along that line, you could extend the life of those batteries by like forever. The biggest problem is the people when it comes to lithium ion batteries. You charge your phone one night when it's at 40%, you charge it the next night when it's at 60%, the next night at 10%, you're killing it that way. But if it always required itself to go down to, let's say, 10 to 20%, then charge back up to, 95% or 100% capacity in that range, and then just did it over and over, it keeps its, value tenfold.
So how long do you think that box lasts? Because to me, the biggest thing that disqualifies almost everything is reasonable access. Like if we don't have, like, we can't make one of those, we can't make the machine that makes one of those. So if we have one, cool, but the second we don't have one, now everything after that chain has become massively reduced in its actual use value.
Well, I mean, that can also though go for the same with the lead acid batteries. How many of us have some level of access to acid? I mean, unless you live in Yellowstone Park or in one of these, magma zones, then you probably don't have access to sulfuric acid or, I believe that's where it was too. That's sulfuric acid. So you don't have access to those acids regularly. It has to be transported. It has to be brought in from somewhere. I believe Yellowstone has some of their areas that are very high concentrations of sulfuric acid, but you're still stuck distilling, or taking the water out of the acid or bringing it to a certain potency so that it's, usable or can take the battery to 100%. So
If I take a bunch of sulfur and put it into water, isn't that sulfuric acid?
yeah, no, it couldn't. I mean, you would have to be like super distilled water, and even then, I think you would have to hit it with electrolysis to charge it.
Electrolysis, as in just a current, alternating or direct?
Yeah, it would. Yeah, I mean, you would have to set it up almost in a battery capacity, like a double clay jar, where the inner clay jar has the distilled water outer clay jar has the sulfuric solution that you made. I believe it'd be put the negative diode in the sulfur, positive diode in the distilled water, and then give it like probably like 50 amps for 24 hours.
Man, battery
Which that
technology.
right there is a huge draw of electricity. A car needs 12 amps to start, so relatively you need like 4 times that run for like probably minimum 12 hours.
I don't know how much a boiler circling a three-phase motor, because I mean, motors I think would be abundant. I think it would be very
Yeah.
easy to find the machinery to generate an electrical current. It's the energy to make that thing move. So, because like I think the energy generation is very easy. It's strictly the storage capacity. So yes,
Mm.
it would be. It might be difficult, but if it held a lot, I mean, batteries. I mean, dude, if fucking stacks of pennies in salt water and interlace them, and you will have electrons moving, like that
We're
will
on
happen.
I think we're on the verge of the next stage of batteries because of the electric cars. There's a couple, because with the watching of the stocks and everything and seeing what's happening, there's a couple companies, one employed by Tesla,
Mm-hmm.
one's employed by GM. There's another big one in China, but they all seem to be at this point rumoring about a battery that's made from a certain crystal, and the crystal has the capacity to just basically forever hold it, and it has the minimal charge value. Like if you give it 5 amps of charge, it holds 4.99 amps forever, instead of traditional batteries where it's like you can charge it to 15 amps and the second you take it off it's dropped down to 12, and then in 6 months it's down to 8, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like once it's charged because you're aligning the molecular structure of the crystal, and then in its decay it unaligns. That's you using the energy, and then you recharge the crystal. But I don't know how far off we are, or now how far it's been put out because of this current bullshit happening. But it seemed like we were probably 6 months away from seeing a V1 of that about a month ago. But again, I don't know now.
Batteries are incredibly simple. Like it's just efficiency and space effectiveness, and I wonder how important that is in a basically a homesteader situation. Like, because that's
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, well, that's one of the primaries, because like you said, I mean, in any given house, you probably have 30 things that you could use to generate electricity. Every ceiling fan, any box fan,
Yes,
basically anything that turns.
a
You can go
motor.
grab the can opener.
All
Yeah.
motors are that. It's crazy.
So, yeah, it would be the capacity first off to store, and then second off is, making it usable outside of its storage facility. Obviously would be after, you established home, is how do you now use that energy if you need to go out of home.
So I guess the scenario I think in is internet is now finally been completely liberalized because it's in satellites, and those satellites are solar powered. So now it's just getting a signal to those satellites. Well, I don't think that takes as much power as people realize. I think satellites, yeah, it's not hard to send that out to them. So internet, but then so let's talk about the things that are maybe more CB radio, longest form of local radio, because I don't think internet would be a form of communication rather than a form of getting information. So CB would allow for that. And then honestly, I don't think about TV. I think about things where
Well,
electricity
what's
is.
funny is with CB, it's like that's one of the longer unlicensed version. Like when I got my amateur radio license, there's long wave radio where I would talk to people in India. You know,
Oh, I didn't know it
obviously
went
a
that
lot of
far.
time
How'd it go around the curvature of Earth?
bounces off the clouds.
Huh. Oh yeah, there's enough particles in there, of course.
Hmm. So I mean, that was the big push back in December for all these companies to buy up all that bandwidth. The 5 gigahertz frequency, and then the six up to 6.3, something like that. And that was a big part to it, is because a lot of that wavelength is first off what the military uses because it's so economical, but also too is surface to space station transmissions, because at those wavelengths, it's super potent and doesn't use much energy.
Yeah.
So they opened up a bunch of them for I mean, it's basically Tesla, but that level of communication to communicate upwards, just so that he has the bandwidth to be able to update all his cars on the road from satellite.
And it's hilarious. I'm just thinking like, honestly, light. Not even really thinking about how to make coffee, because like I think food ends up being fairly easy. I think it really ends up just being like enough power to not be controlled by the day and night cycle would be all. Like I would love a coffee maker, but I already know how inefficiently it is to put electricity through tungsten to boil water. There's an easier way to boil water. We have enough trees that grow at an exponential rate thanks to, obviously the free market. If we're cutting trees down every day, you don't think there's a company that's breeding trees that grow very quickly?
Oh yeah, dude, it's poplar. They've already done it.
Yeah.
So I mean,
like,
those things, yeah, you can grow a full tree in 3 months.
And I mean,
insane.
Dude, I've never seen what is it called when branches die off? Do you know that word? Shedding. Like here, I've never, like, I don't know, I guess I just never noticed shedding in New England. Maybe it's because there's enough pine trees and oaks don't do it as much, but like the amount of wood that just falls off these trees on a regular basis is annoying unless it was a resource. Like, it feels like pennies are dropping on me, but those could be quarters very quickly.
100%.
Yeah, so
yeah, whoever's scooping those up is selling them as mulch.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I've already wondered, like, bone meal. Like, I know it's very valuable, and honestly, I throw a lot of bones away because of my chicken broth. I don't know how to, like, you can't ship it if it still doesn't eat. Like, you have to be able to get all the fat, basically, all the triglycerides off of it. But I feel like that is more useful than eggshells.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's 50-to-1 nitrogen. Like, you can burn the ground with that stuff.
Is there a nitric acid?
I believe it's one of the lower of
Yeah.
the acidic values, though. But yeah.
And by acid, we're now just talking about electrons' potentiality to move.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Just want to make sure because I know that's what it means. But dude, at my core, I really only think about batteries, and by that, I only really think about electrons moving. I didn't realize that, like, to even say you're charging a battery is inaccurate. Almost all the verbiage for electricity is inverted, and like inverted, like first they're using the wrong terminology and then they're inverting it to the positive. It's literally always the negative, and then the wording is still a little wrong, because I just didn't know that electrons aren't consumed. It just seems that when they're moving, devices have action. Like, you don't just, that's not even how batteries work, but it's just its potentiality for the electron to move from one side to the other, and then if electrons are now being moved from the diode to the anode, it just allows the potentiation for it to go to the other side. That is it. Like, that just blew my mind. Like, that's why, alternating current works. It doesn't even matter the fucking direction, except for a lot of electronics don't know how to utilize that, which is why direct current works for a lot of simpler machinery. Like,
made simpler that way, yeah. Direct current is definitely, the flowing of the electrons in one way.
And I think it's not even the fact that it's flowing in one way, it's just because it has to stop to flow the other way. And that's the problem with the electronics. It doesn't have, that's not consistent.
Put that in, that's why you've got that box. When you plug in any type of thing that has a box, you've got a transformer right there.
And isn't that just a bunch of capacitors?
No, it's funny though, all it is just usually I believe it's cast iron or potash with copper wrapped around it X amount of times. If you have it wrapped around X amount of times, it transfers from one to the other.
Man, I really feel like copper should be the resource we're storing more than anything else.
I mean, it seems to be the most universally valuable. We use it at the lowest denomination of our money, but yet it runs 95% of our country.
Yeah, even generators are still, like, all three-phase generators are copper and magnets. We're not using a different metal for the electron change. And when you look at the atomic structure of copper, yeah, it just has so much potentiation for electrons to be moved. And dude, the fact that it's not even like, it can also be the hole moving. It doesn't have to be the electron moving. It can be the absence moving. That works too. Like,
the basis of our motors, basis of the transformers, basis of our grid, basis of many things.
And that's kind of why I think, like, I know factually there's got to be a battery that has an electrolyte that's easy enough to, I say reproduce, but to keep producing, to where the corrosion over time like there's some medium point of those three variables that is reasonable in a world without digital technology.
Well, that's what I was just about to say. That's why they're looking into that crystal formation because it's solid state. Like that's the biggest problem with batteries is the maintenance. It's not the battery itself. You know, it's battery maintenance. You have to discharge it to a certain level, charge it to a certain level. It needs to be done at certain time periods. You know, things like that. You don't want to keep hitting your battery at random values and bringing it to random states. You want it to hit a low threshold, then bring it back to a high threshold, then let it sit, then bring it back to a low threshold, then back to a high threshold. I mean, I'm super anal with my batteries with my drill set. But then my drill set still worked fine after 14 years, you know, because I always used it down until the damn thing wouldn't turn. And that meant, you know, I used it till it was no longer functional to screw a screw. And then I would hold the end and discharge the rest of the battery all the way as far as till I didn't even feel torque in my hand. Charge it up to 100%, switch to the next battery, do the same thing. And it's like I rotated between 3 batteries and they worked fine since I got them.
I've gotten ultra critical with my phone battery too, as I've learned more about it. Like, it doesn't even see a charger till it's at under 20%. I look for the low battery, and then I still don't necessarily rush to get to it, and I don't put it on low power mode because I've got access to plugs now. The car in the house has obviously been solved. But on the flip side, I also don't necessarily try to get it to 100% either, because there's on both sides there's an ability of corrosion. I always once it's over, like if it's over 80%, especially with how fast they charge now, I'm pretty much like, all right, cool. I'll wait till you're back down to under 10.
Well, just so you know too, that's all programmed into the phone. When it says 100%, it's only at like 85. Yeah, they try to build in for user management.
I appreciate you, not you, and I was referring to the device, but fuck, makes it real hard. But I understand, you have to play to the user, because like we are the fail point of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything is a user error because there's too much. It's just too much. There's too much to understand, and it's all thinking slow. Like, dude, there's nothing in my capacity to not understand batteries other than I don't have the ability to translate it in my mind because I'm all verbal. All my knowledge is verbal, and that's why electricity has been so difficult for me to grasp. Every word that I understand isn't what's happening, so I have to hold it in my...
That's what it is, yeah. Battery is just, realistically, it's potential energy.
It's remove realistically.
It requires a circuit. The circuit is what makes the electron flow. Up until that point, it's all potential energy.
I think capacitors would probably be a better option than I see batteries are easy to make because they store, but I think capacitors may end up being, but I know what a capacitor does, but I don't understand how it's fully different than a battery.
I mean, like the battery isn't going to instant discharge like a capacitor has the capability to. As far as its functionality, yeah, capacitors, I mean, in a lot of the things that we use where people think there's batteries inside, it's not, it's capacitors. Mm-hmm. Just because they've got a capacitor with a resistor. So the resistor blocks it from flowing at full speed, because if not, yeah, your end of your drill would blow off and then you'd have no battery. But, I mean, I think a lot of times too goes back to functionality and the potential for user error. With a capacitor, you could do a lot of damage.
Straight death. Capacitors are death. Capacitors are lightning bolts. Like, there's a reason that people should genuinely worry. But at the same point, it's not hard to change the amperage of electrical current. Like, you don't actually need that amount. Like, you can double and triple. Like, do you know how microwaves work? It's crazy. It's crazy how much they amplify the base power without taking more power. And it's why they're also incredibly dangerous. It's not the magnetron. It's the fucking capacitor right before it. If we generated electricity to capacitors, the capacitors would be a more viable way of charging a battery than directly into it. I do think that's the medium, because I do agree where you're like how much amperage it would take to do that. I think a capacitor would be the way to do that. I just don't know how yet, but nothing in my mind
says. Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, the uptake is definitely closer to 1-to-1. When you're charging anything with chemicals in it or whatever, that's got, like 60, maybe 70% of it is going towards what you're trying to do. The other 30% is heat. That's why everything warms up when it's charging.
And it's getting hotter.
Mm-hmm. And that's just energy being lost.
And capacitors would probably be the easiest thing to get. Microwaves everywhere. There's other capacitors to be found, but like as far as I know, those are kind of the biggest ones that are like really viable.
Yeah, very abundant.
I really want to start going to a dump. I'd really like to see what's in a dump.
Oh yeah, or even yeah. I mean, the back end of manufacturing plants being closed down or whatnot. Dude, we got at one point we found one when I was younger. Dude, we found capacitors that were like this big.
Oh
It
wow.
was freaking. Oh yeah, they would have killed 10 people at once. Like they were definitely monsters. And they said they're used in industrial, and the industrial complex might have a shorter lifespan than the capacitor lifespan. So they just, some of them get sent to recycling, but depending on the why they shut down or where they shut down or whatever else, a lot of times they're just discarded, auctioned off, sold, whatever. But
Appliances, man. Dryers, motor, all day long, in a format that would be very easy to connect to other things. Very little modification to the motor on a dryer to make it to make it a instead of a motor, a generator.
mm, oh yeah,
Already has the wiring.
that's like
Already
that's what I
gauged
mean
correctly.
exactly. Like a box fan, it's just a windmill. You know, power's coming out the cord.
Man, bro, I kind of hope we make it out of this just that way we can voluntarily change it over. I really do. Like, all of this is incredibly interesting to me, and I don't think it would be that hard to have something that was completely self-sustaining.
I wouldn't. I believe, with what I understand of how Tesla was using the transmission of energy with what he was trying to do with today's components, it could easily be done. Just catching any basically radio frequency or any frequency that's being sent out through, cell service or whatever else, that's not being caught by said items, even just with where you're talking about satellites beaming down things. It's not like they laser beam it down to each car. It's sent down into general broadcast so that potential energy is hitting everywhere, but only being seized in a few situations where the crystals are aligned to catch that frequency. So if you took, large swaths of land, and instead of creating a bunch of solar panels, just caught those frequencies, you're doing in essence the same thing. It just take, something vibrating from catching that frequency and then attaching on the backsides a way to capture.
This has been a very interesting episode. I like the two subjects that we talked about. We tend to cover three things, but these two are way more interesting. What would you title this episode?
How the government works and what we should be doing about it.
That was an interesting episode. I like the fact that neither one of us know where it's going to go. We're really just seeking to think out loud without an agenda or really attaching to anything, just observing and then giving our opinions on it. If you're watching this on YouTube, smash that like button, hit subscribe. More is going to be coming. I'm working on setting up interviews so that way we can really hear some other minds and how they think and how they process their life. So thanks for being with us and have an awesome day.